What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your weekend review for May 25th, 2020. We got a jam-packed episode for you today, so we're going to jump right into it. Starting out with the patch notes, we had 4 patches this past week. 3.9 PTU-B, which added the Cutlass Blue and fixed the hilariously hurricane-level winds around Hurston and Daymar and other planetary bodies. Then we had 3.9.1C on the PTU, and this was mainly bug fixes, so no more no-clip in bug if you were in, I know I was doing a lot of box missions in the Aurora, and we were getting a lot of those. No more crime stats for not stopping for the cops. It's just a fine. In the past, it was a 20K fine. I assume the fine is still just as high. And mission givers should now be responsive in speaking to us, which is pretty cool. And then we had 3.9.1D on the PTU, and this just fixed the Cutlass Blue, a lot of issues that were involved in its initial implementation. Then we got 3.9.1 to the live servers, and this was basically just a culmination of everything prior, and the real focus here is just less crashing, and that's if we can even get into the game. I know a lot of people were really excited for the Invictus Free Fly, and it was basically on fire for the first couple days. I think things somewhat have smoothed out up till now. But let's jump over to roadmap updates. And jumping into roadmap roundup, it was pretty light. We had a Cutlass Blue being released, which obviously we mentioned just before, and they also updated the bearing SMG image on the roadmap. So that's all they felt was worth explaining on roadmap roundup, but our image from Reddit shows a little bit more progress. So ship HUDs had, and their rework had very small progress this week, but then body dragging and elevator panels had somewhat bigger progress, and we'll talk about body dragging later on in the show. There was no progress on some key features, specifically surrender, the restricted area, on new targeting methods, and no progress on the M50, even though we're going to see that they made progress on the M50 when we talk on Inside Star Citizen. It just more and more proves to me that either the roadmap is now a marketing tool or it's completely worthless. So like every time I research for Weekend Review, I just get upset with the roadmap updates lately. So now we're going to move on to video updates, and this is where a big part of the meat of today's show is. Starting out with ISC, we had a little, I guess, a description of what the actual Invictus holiday is.
The UEE celebrates Invictus for sort of 2 reasons. It's a naval holiday that commemorates sort of the beginning of military service.
So the kind of things we wanted to differentiate from the IAE is wanted to get a lot more of the lore infused into the location, both visually and kind of things to read and find out about that kind of sets it apart from a standard kind of ship manufacturing display.
And secondly, the Navy also uses Invictus as a way to showcase some of the ships that they've purchased over the past year, and so they invite the ship manufacturers to come and provide sort of models for the public to get a closer look at. And this year is pretty exciting because the Navy just recently acquired some of Origin's brand new ground vehicle called the G12.
I think this is pretty cool. It's an all in-game, technically, holiday that can absolutely be something that's special on giving out like yearly items in the future. This is something that's obviously going to continue on over the years. Either they can be given out to players for being a backer for X amount of years, or maybe just sold in game, which is obviously the more preferable way of doing it. And it's super standard in traditional MMOs, and I expect that to continue here with Star Citizen. And it's also kind of a really nice place to subtly start the marketing for Squadron 42, which absolutely seems what's happening here. If you look at the Invictus displays at the actual convention center, it's all very kind of, Navy-centric, which is where most of the time is spent in Squadron 42, I would imagine. And then they mentioned the military and the G12, and like, come on, dude, like, this is so hard to believe. But let's hear more about the G12.
G12 Origin Rover is basically Origin's entry into this market. It's a competitor to the Ursa Rover, but this is classic Origin good looking, cool styling, high quality. It's essentially a two-man vehicle, and the base version has capacity for 2 SCU. There are 3 variants of the G12. There's the base version, there is the racer version, which is for the enthusiast, and then we have the third and final, which is the combat variant, which is why it's here at the show. It was built for the UEE.
I got nothing. I got nothing. It's just not believable to me that the military would want to buy a Tesla. So it seems really clear to me that Invictus Week is for Memorial Day, and it's a military holiday, and for whatever reason this concept art completed, and they just made up a story so it would fit with the sales and they can all come together. I'm not buying it. So enough marketing stuff. Let's get to the juice of the show, and you know, like let's get positive here and not negative. The best thing about ISC every other week is the sprint report. If you want to know what's going on in Star Citizen, you should really be paying attention to 2 things: the monthly report and the sprint report. And that's how you know what is actually happening, not what is perceived to be happening. You know what I mean? So the sprint report is a massive positive. I love it. Keep it up. It's fantastic. So they start out right away with body dragging. It was in a no-go meeting, and it is a go. And it looks really good. It's intended to be for Squadron 42 mostly, but it definitely has some value in Star Citizen as well, for bounty hunting and for dragging an NPC away, or maybe another player. So they're just really working on trying to get the hand a little closer with all armors, and it should be good to go. It looks really good. The Cutlass Blue in 3.9.1, obviously we've talked about it a couple times on today's show. It should be available for people to purchase on the Drake day of the Invictus event, and that is on May 30th through June 1st, and that might extend because of all the problems they had with Invictus. Then the M50 cockpit that we talked about before, it's obviously being worked on. Here's the work. So roadmap, what's up? I don't know what's going on. And then dynamic brightness, it basically just changes the background of the HUDs and other HUD elements that would be on our helmets and stuff like that. And it's just a proof of concept for right now, but it's looking pretty good so far. And then we had some updated images for the Grimhex update and changes, so that's pretty cool. And then our first look at Pyro 1, which is bringing life to a lifeless planet, apparently. So I'm kind of confused here. This planet's supposed to be scourged with constant solar flares from the system's sun. So I'm not really sure what the idea of having plants survive here. So maybe there's some changes to the actual lore of the Pyro system. We'll just have to see. Part of me thinks that it's just the environment team that can't help themselves to make pretty things. That's a really positive thing. But some things should just be lifeless and somewhat useless. But again, if we look at the lore here, this is used for refining by some not so lawful characters possibly in the lore, and maybe we can use that too. So instead of focusing on the plant life, maybe we should focus on how that would work. And who knows, maybe that's something they're going to show us later. I just don't really get the plant life on the planet. But all right, then we had SCL, and this was a beefy one. So we're going to go into a few points, share a few clips of video, and then at the end I'll go through just kind of quick fire some things that they mentioned as well. So starting out, one of the first questions was, is Shield Tech still being worked on? Because it was pulled off the roadmap, and then obviously we don't really know what's happening with it.
It is still being worked on. That rework Shield Tech is mostly to do with SDFs. The idea that, you know, previously we would have the ship encased in like a mesh that someone would make, but now that is like calculated automatically with this SDF. So an SDF, if you haven't heard of it before, is this data structure that lets you query how far away a point is from the ship. So you can effectively work out very easily if a bullet or a projectile has hit the ship, and it'll result in much more reliable shield hits and stuff like that. VFX is a huge one. There's so much VFX that you really want to like conform to the ship, and it's time consuming, right, to like author all these effects for every different ship. So this automates a lot of it.
Yeah, especially when you have to deal with animating ship parts and bits that fall off the ship. It sort of, you get that, not for free, but it's significantly easier than how the current systems work?
So yes, obviously it's still being worked on, and in my opinion, it's vital to the health of combat in Star Citizen. As they explain, it's kind of important to know what hits the shield and what doesn't, and the sign distance fields, when they say SDF, that should help with that. It also seems like it's going to help them make ships a bit quicker as well. Then they move on to another question. Are fixed weapons still bad, and are you working on them? What's kind of going on here was basically it.
Yeah,
Somewhat
that's actually another
limited.
good point, and something that we're fixing for 310. Like, we know fixed weapons have been pretty rubbish, certainly compared to gimbal assist and gimbals, and it's something we've worked on, and it seems to be significantly
much better in
better.
310.
Yeah, it'd be a viable choice now between the two.
Now, we've all heard this before with ESP changes and all sorts of things. I'm eagerly waiting 3.10's changes in terms of ship combat. Same goes for turrets, and we'll get into that in a second, but I'm just cautiously optimistic about this. They're talking a lot about it. They've been talking about it a lot over the last 6 months to maybe 9 months at this point, that, you know, they were in initial talks, and now things are actually happening, it seems. So we'll have to see with 310. That's planned for the end of June. I don't know if it'll be on time, but we'll have to see. Now, turret improvements. These are something that they touch on in the show as well, and it looks pretty promising.
For like 310, it's a really good step.
Best I've ever played.
Yeah. You know, we've had some really positive play tests between the group where we've gotten a hammerhead, for example, and we've felt like kings, basically, you know. So, and that wasn't possible before.
We had one person flying a hammerhead, and two people in the turret. So one was in the top turret and one was in the side turret, and we were just constantly spawning waves of AI. And within about 5 minutes, we'd killed 50 people just with turrets, which is pretty unheard of with how turrets have been.
Now, it's more than unheard of to be able to take down that many AI. It's hard in a turret right now. So the fact that they're able to do that with that few turrets and a hammerhead, and they're honestly, they were probably stock as well, that makes me even more excited for 3.10 and any changes coming with that. So this should be a huge change if what they're saying is true, that even the smallest multi-crew ships, think about like the Vanguard, the Carrack, or the Cutlass, where another person can actually help support their pilot if this is actually true. So I'm really excited for this. They also touched on MFD improvements as well. Somebody asked a question about them.
You'll have persistence on the MFDs and the pages on the MFDs, and you also would be able to like customize your HUD a little bit and have persistence on that as well. But that will come as the MFD rework eventually comes to fruition.
This isn't that huge of a deal, but I think it's pretty big. It's kind of making your ship your own. How many times do you get into a ship and are leaving a hangar, let's say, and you have to call the ATC? All the time, right? So the fact that it's almost never on one of the panels when you initially leave a planet is kind of annoying. So just that little change would be a huge quality of life change for me. And then somebody asked why do ground vehicles get no love?
You know, we definitely see them as not up to the standards of spaceships, but, you know, we want to get the spaceship experience and the combat experience and the turrets, everything up to a really high standard that we're happy with. And then once we're not adding loads of features on top of that experience, we can move those resources onto the ground vehicles.
For me, this was the biggest part of the show. And it's the point that they made that ground vehicles aren't a focus right now because they shouldn't be. Ship combat and ships in atmosphere and all those things are not good enough. They're not good enough yet. They're not good enough for me. They're not good enough for... I don't know too many people that are currently pleased with it. So that being the focus and then moving on from that to ground vehicles is the right way to do things. And it's just nice to hear it. And when somebody asks that question, I know what their intentions are. They're seeing a ground vehicle get sold. There's a couple ground vehicles in game, and there's really zero point in using them right now. And it could be kind of frustrating, right? But at the same time, the ships have to be on point first, and I'm glad that is the focus. And the last thing is just watch.
Next week, we are back with an episode of Calling All Devs, focused on Salvage.
All right, I don't know about you guys, but my expectations are extraordinarily low for next week's Calling All Devs. My expectations are lots of non-answers, talking around the questions, and the word priority mentioned about 1 million times, but we'll have to see what they say about salvage. I really hope my expectations are exceeded. And yeah, let's get into that rapid fire stuff. So they talked about AI blades for turrets. Prelim work actually started on it, not necessarily for the AI blades, but prelim work that would eventually make AI blades possible. And for those of you guys who don't know what that is, you would put a blade into your turret and it automates it so you don't need somebody in it. The computer would actually fire at targets and enemies around you for you while you're flying around, but the downside is you should have to lower your size of your weapon. But they mentioned blade slots, so using a blade slot for one of these AI things might be the new downside. It was unclear, so hopefully we'll hear more about that in the future. Releasing gameplay with ships, they want to do it if they can. The Cutlass Red was a perfect example, but they can't every time. Ship modularity. It will be explained more in the Calling All Devs. So Calling All Devs isn't just about salvage, and work is scheduled for next quarter, which is the 3.10 quarter while we're playing 3.10, but they can't confirm that it will be released at any point at this time. Then ship updates. So Bandit Merchantman, they wanted to spend more time concepting. What they originally said was that the Carrack team that worked on the Carrack was going to get split. And some of them were going to work on the Bandit Merchantman, some of them were going to work on something else, and they ended up getting split working on other ships. So whatever that means. But for me, I know a lot of people are waiting for the Bandit Merchantman, but it has to be perfect because people have waited for so long. Same went for the 890 jump, same went for the Carrack, to be honest. And the amount of time that they took on the Carrack, it showed, and it's a great ship to fly. It feels amazing, and it fits in the Star Citizen universe, and the Bandit Merchantman has to be that way as well. So for me, take your time, get it right, but make it a priority, right? Do not shift away from that priority. The Bandit Merchantman probably should be the #1 priority for any ship work going forward, because it might be one of the furthest in the backlog at this point. The Hull C, it's the same sad story. The vast majority are of the tech. The same sad story basically is we need X, Y, and Z tech in order to make the Hull C. They've been saying it for years. The difference is that they're saying a vast majority of this tech is either in progress or will be in progress soon, and docking is one of those things that most of the progress was completed. Drake Corsair has no update at all. The Redeemer we'll see in the Aegis Day hologram, so keep an eye out for that. Mercury Star Runner, it initially couldn't fit a rover, but now it will. The Taurus, it's on their internal schedule, and honestly, they're saying that an entire rework of the Connie is possibly in the cards. Personally, I think it's needed, so go for it. The Polaris is not an active dev, but they sold out at $750 each of this ship. It blows my mind, the naivety of people that are buying into this game. I feel like most of these people are probably just resellers or something like that, but people who are buying a Polaris where it's possible that you will not be able to fly this ship for years. And the initial sale of this ship, and I believe it was the same price, was in 2016. Lastly, a second round of polish was supposed to go into the 600i. It's not being worked on right now, but they know what they want to do. Now let's move on to other updates, and this section has been meaty lately these last couple weeks, and this week is no exception. Squadron 42 update video is going to be a little bit late. They're not really giving any indication on what happened and why it's late, but it does seem like it's going to be available really soon. Honestly, guys, this is very similar to the Calling All Devs. I have very low expectations for these. They're not going to share anything massive. They never do. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And if they do, I'm going to feel really good. And I think that's just my defense mechanism. I may seem really negative at times. The reason is it's my defense mechanism. If I keep my expectations at the bottom floor for things, when they exceed them, it feels really good. When they meet them, it feels normal. So that's what I'm doing. The Cutlass Blue, we've mentioned a couple times, is obviously in 3.9.1 now. Its upgrade value in my hangar is 150, so I imagine when it goes on sale, that's going to be the price. There is no sale page currently, and it will go live on the 30th and the 1st during the Drake Day. The Origin G12 was also sold, and I'm just not buying this thing, man. Like, it's just such a weird ship to me. Designed specifically for combat, the stock G12 is what it says. It's beautiful. There's no denying that it's beautiful. It looks like an Audi concept car. It's really cool, but we don't have a purpose for ground vehicles yet. So it's just a weird feeling for me, because I look at it, it looks amazing, but I don't want it because I don't know what I would do with it. Then there's 8 missiles and countermeasures on the military variant. I'm not buying it either. I mean, you just look at the thing and you know it's not a military vehicle, even though it has 8 missiles, which could be fairly powerful at some point, but just kind of weird right now. And an EMP for racing, which is like, what are your intentions for racing? Why is there an EMP in this thing? What do ground vehicles even do? It's just so confusing. But it's beautiful. They're $55, so they're not too expensive. And yeah, it's pretty neat. Now, paint customization details. You can do paint customization in 3.9.1. You can purchase a few of them on the website. They are swappable, so once you do the paint job, it's not stuck there, and you can kind of put them in and out of certain ships. There are exclusive skins coming for UEC in-game. Now, a lot of you may have seen and have made comments to me since this post has come out that this was my idea, and I want to make it very clear that this idea was from Wildly Coyote in our comments of the video Star Citizen needs to get their ships together. And I took his comment and I made a tweet about it and said this was the coolest idea I've heard. And you know what? I didn't give him the credit he deserves. And a lot of people were giving me credit for this going into the game. I made a tweet to take his idea and push it to a wider audience, and it reached the top of Reddit. And I don't know if CIG saw this and put this into the paint customization details, or if this was already planned as it is. But regardless, I think it's a really cool idea, and I'm really excited for it. So, Wildly Coyote, you had an amazing idea, and it's going to make the game so much better. And if this was because of you, good on you, man. Really, really awesome. Prices are based on hulls as well. And some of the prices are kind of expensive. It's a very weird system, so let me know what you guys think about the paint system below. But for me personally, the G12 is our first concept ship, and it's the month of May, the end of May. And I think they're probably shifting towards more cosmetic sales in the future, and I consider this a positive. But let me know what you guys think. And the last couple things is there were some dev responses to some posts on Spectrum, one of them for iCache, and its value and its importance. And the bigger one, I think, for me was people were kind of complaining that there was a lot of 30K errors and why is that a thing. And there was a dev response there as to why that happened. So feel free to go check out those posts. Links are in the description as always. And then there were some minor knowledge base updates on how to get places and some how to and why certain bugs happen and stuff like that. So guys, that will do it with this week's episode. I really appreciate you guys watching. As always, I do stream live on Twitch every day but Monday, and it's twitch.tv/SaltEMike. So feel free to stop by, hit the follow button, say hello. And yeah, leave a like, comment, let me know what you thought about any of the subjects on this week's show, and I will catch you guys next week. Bye, everybody.